chance, just introduce yourselves on the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourself, say where you're joining us from, tell us what you're doing in the agribusiness space. And of course, as the session proceeds, feel free to interact using the question and answer. So briefly, just to give an overview of tonight's session, we've been covering since May the role of agribusiness advisors in the food safety systems for this country. And we've been getting input from a variety of seasoned practitioners on different aspects, from the agro inputs to soil management to production, all the way to post-harvest handling, and market access value addition, which we covered last week. And it's been a very, very fruitful engagement. We are grateful for everyone who's taken their time to share with us their expertise and their knowledge. And tonight we will be looking at issues of sustainability and inclusion of youth in agribusiness, because this is a very, very critical area to the success of every business. If you have the next generation coming on board, then of course, and learning the skills and the ropes, we're in a much better place. And we have seen as a professional body that fewer and fewer youth are actually taking up agriculture, and that's a concern. Because if the youth do not take up agriculture and they do not appreciate the opportunities in agriculture, then what's the future of what we are doing? You know, it will be bleak. So our panelists will be sharing with us their perspectives on this particular topic of agribusiness sustainability and youth inclusion. We will be having the main presentation from Nicholas Kahiga, who's a seasoned advisor in this sector. And to start us off, I'll give our main panelists an opportunity just to introduce themselves, starting with Nicholas Kahiga. Just give us a brief background and overview of yourself. Pauline Mundia, we are glad to have you with us. We'll also give a brief overview of herself. And later on, we'll be having David Degwa joining us. I want to acknowledge Nicholas Ambanya, who took us through the market access session, and we'll be sharing inputs on tonight's topic. And also Peter Muthi, who was also with us when we covered the topic on crop protection and good agricultural practice. And then, of course, Teresa Wafula, who's been a moderator in some of the previous sessions. So to Nicholas and Pauline, kindly just a brief introduction of yourselves, and then we shall kick off into today's topic. Karibuni sana.
Thank you, Ricky, for the opportunity that you've accorded us to share our experience and share with our viewers and the youth of this country. My name is Nicholas Kahiga. It's a coincidence that today I'm celebrating my 21st year since I joined mainstream agriculture. I feel honored to be part of this team. So 21 years of continuous contribution to this vital sector in our economy. Currently, I'm the head agronomist at Industrial Promotion Services Kenya, which is part of the Aga Khan Development Network, where I give technical advice and strategy on a couple of businesses for local, regional, and also for export market. I've had an experience across different value chains. And as Ricky said when he was introducing, I also have a passion of mentoring youth into agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicholas. Pauline, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Pauline Mundia. I work for an organization called By Vision Africa Trust that is based in Nairobi. And what we do is we give information to farmers on sustainable agriculture using various different methods, audio, print, and online versions. I'm an agriculturalist by profession, and I've been in the extension field for about 14 years, both in the private and the public sector. And actually, agribusiness is something that we have really been trying to bring forward so that farmers can really feel farming is a business and farming is their job. So I'm happy to be here and look forward to further giving further inputs. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Pauline and Nicholas, for your introductory remarks. My apologies, I had a slight problem with my controls, but we are able to continue. Nicholas Ambanya, probably just say hi because you're here. It's good for guys to hear your voice before we kick into the main session.
Hi guys, as you've heard, my name is Nicholas Ambanya. I've been here with you. I work for Trigger Foods, where I head the Department of Fresh, right from production all the way to marketing, and I'm glad to engage again today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nicholas. So without wasting too much time, we'll get into tonight's session. And by way of introduction, we through this particular webinar and masterclass series have been looking at the perspectives from seasoned agribusiness advisors on what it takes to achieve food and nutrition security, of course, with an eye on agribusiness as a venture, looking at issues that contribute to profitability and sustainability of any agribusiness enterprise. So we started all the way from the key components of what would make for agribusiness success. We had some of our colleagues share what you must consider if you're engaging in agribusiness in order to achieve both profitability and sustainability. And we've looked at issues around agro inputs. We've looked around soil management. We looked at good agricultural practices. We have looked at market access and value addition. So we've gone through the whole process, right from the soil to the seed to growing of a crop and to the marketing of that produce. And tonight we are focusing on sustainability, which is linked to issues around finance, issues around environmental management, issues around how you just run your business to ensure that it is there for the long term. And of course, linked to that, the issue of youth participation because of the concerns and what we have seen of declining participation by youth in agriculture are critical to ensuring sustainability of any agribusiness. So to start us off, we're going to have a presentation from Nicholas Kahiga, who will set the pace, and then we'll have a discussion with inputs from our panels around what it is that any agribusiness entrepreneur must consider in order to be sustainable, much as they want to be profitable, but to be sustainable for the long term. So I will be running the presentation, and Nicholas, you're welcome to take us forward as we start to go into your segment. Karibu sana, Nicholas Kahiga.
Okay, once again, thank you very much. I know my previous panelists and presenters had dwelled on the issue of sustainable agriculture from the previous presentations that we have seen. I, just like I have introduced myself, Nicholas Kahiga, the General Manager, Agro Supply Chains, and also the head agronomist at IPS. A bit of my education, then my international experience. It's well put there. Why I put my international experience there is also to bring some of the lessons that I have come across some of these countries, either by working with people in those countries, agribusiness value panelists and stakeholders in some of these countries, and then be able to compare with our region, whether it is Kenya or it is East Africa as it is. So I have had a good experience working with people out of Kenya, interacting with them in different value chains, which brings a lot of lessons that can be taken to our East African region or Kenya by itself. Next. Yeah, as I look at sustainable agriculture, and the word sustainable means that you need to take care of what you're doing today so that it can benefit someone in future. And that's basically the meaning that I take, that whatever you're doing today, you got to sustain it so that somebody else can use it or you can use it in future. And these two things that we are discussing today, the sustainability of future cannot be discussed without knowing that we have generations to come, we have the current generations, and we have generations to come. And for sustainable agriculture, it must be economically viable. Economically viable, I mean that agriculture, as you all know, is one of the biggest employers in the world. And we have seen where it is not economically viable, a lot of people tend to run away from it. So it must be somehow sustaining and bringing some profits on the table for whoever is undertaking whatever agricultural undertaking that you are taking. So there is the economic part of it. There is the social part of it. It has to be supportive. In our region, we have people doing subsistence agriculture, which means that people are doing that agriculture to be able to sustain themselves in terms of food, in terms of making sure that they are not going out of pocket to go and buy food, meaning that for whatever they can be able to sustain or to get out of the farms, they are able to improve their quality of life. So this happens to the farmers themselves and the farming communities, because the farming communities or the farm communities are interlinked in different ways that we are going to see later on in this presentation. So it supports, the social support has to be there, has to be protected, and has to be sustained into the future. Ecologically sound, we must preserve the resource base. We have the agricultural resources that we are bestowed by nature, and mostly this comes in terms of land, water, and so many other things that are environmental that we need to sustain. So every day we undertake an agricultural undertaking, we have to make sure that we preserve that for tomorrow, and not just for us, but for future generations. We have all seen, even during this time of COVID, that everything else almost stopped, but agriculture never stopped. Farming never stopped. Food production never stopped. And most of us, it's the real time that we know that we have to protect what we have, because pandemics will come in, but agriculture will start. Next. Yeah, there are a bit of quick facts that we have about agriculture in Kenya that I gathered. Some of it is a bit outdated. I have not been able to access the current, the most up-to-date. So this is about 2015, 2014. The 70% contribution to the Kenyan economy. We have heard even our leaders telling us agriculture is the backbone of this country. One factor that it's also being discussed, and it is very relevant to what we are talking about, is the average age of the Kenyan farmers at 2014. I hope this has improved, and this was seen as 60 years. So if you take the average age of 60 years and then you see that is your Kenyan farmer, then we are all at risk of not having food in the next 5 years, because these people must be 65 now, and we need to inject more and more young blood into agriculture. There has been allocation on from the national government and other donors in terms of money that has been put into food and nutrition, and also some other specific money that have been put on value addition and improvement of the agricultural sector by 2022. I don't want to dwell too much on that, because money can be allocated, but the end use and the accompanying result is what matters, not what the money has been put on. Then one of the key number that I picked was Kenyan youth, 13.7 million by 2014, and 35.4 of the total population, and with 10% in agriculture. So we still have a huge number of the youth that we need to bestow the responsibility to feed the 50 million Kenyans that we have. And as I say this, I bet that each and every one of us listening and all over, somebody has taken breakfast, has taken lunch, you've taken a snack somewhere, you have also maybe preparing to take dinner, all of it, which is part of what you're talking about in terms of agriculture. Next. Yeah, we have different agro value chains in our current market. I may not have taken all of them, but you all know in the animal based, we have big, especially in our country, big value chains on daily, all the way from the daily farmer. And Kenya is very unique in terms of that unit. I think it's quite unique in Africa that most of the daily sector is supported by smallholders within our country, with the dynamics that are there. Then we have others like beef, poultry, aquaculture, and we also have some different value chains and supply chains focused on that. One of the other one that is there, which is animal-based, is leather. It's somehow, it was quite thriving before. Not much now because of infiltration of imported goods or imported leather goods, especially from China. And also the bit that it requires quite a lot of investment when you have to get the final goods into the market. Although this doesn't mean that there cannot be some cottage industries that are leather based. We still have them in Kenya, but comparable into the world leather market, I am not sure we go beyond 5%. We have apiary, this is beekeeping, and in this I also forgot to put things like the blue economy as part of it. These are sectors that have employed a lot and very exciting sectors. One of the sector that is evolving in Kenya is the beekeeping sector. And so long as you are able to ensure your customers that your honey and honey products are well sourced, it makes quite a big business out of it. And there have been technologies that are coming up to make sure that the kind of hives that we are using are able to generate more harvests without interfering with the bees themselves. And not forgetting that bees play a very big role in our pollination and other factors that comes with crop production. So we have other value chains in the crops, and I know Soka is more biased on this. We have seed sector is a big one. Actually, most of it controlled by multinationals, even here in Kenya. We have cereals and pulses, the maize, the wheat, the barley, pulses, the legumes, mostly for local consumption. We have the big one, the horticulture and floriculture, which is more for local, regional, and also international. And then we have other industrial crops. We all know some of these industrial crops that our country was good and it's still good at. It's debatable, and I'll leave it to the panel to debate on how we are doing on that, whether we are doing well or not. Then something that is coming up, pastures and fodders. This has developed very well in the recent years, especially because of the land use systems, where most of our farmers in the dairy and beef industry rely much on zero grazing rather than the open fields. And this sector of pastures and fodders come in as a very new thing that is coming, and new technologies are coming on preserving fodder for future use. We know we all sometimes hit by weather patterns, but I don't think we are going to get back to where we are, where we are not keeping enough fodder in pastures for our animals. Then obviously there is ornamentals and trees. You all know that we have a lot of people doing flowers and trees, whether they are fruit trees, avocados, mangoes, and so many. It's an area that is also coming up and has taken a lot of our youth, because it's quite a very lucrative business when it comes to some of the undertakings that new farmers are coming in. And you all know that we have had quite a lot of demand for things like avocado seedlings that would be coming from those nurseries. Next. Yeah, and for the purpose of the youth, we always say that agriculture is not just taking a djembe and going to the farm. I think it's one of the most diverse sector that I've seen through my many interactions that I've seen, and through my many travels even out there in the world. We have to build a view, especially to our youth, that you can build a career out of agriculture. And as I said, this is my 22nd year as an agronomist working in different value chain. And what we need to get to know, or to get to tell people out there, is that you can make a career out of agriculture, and the choice is yours. The choice is, where do you think you have the best, or you can apply your knowledge or key skill sets well. And I know when we went to the university, they had not even diversified as they have diversified now. Things like supply chains and procurement and logistics were, by then, I don't think not many degrees were being offered on that. But my presentation shows that you can be an agronomist, either soil and crop scientist, you can be an agro-engineer, or you can get to finance and accounting, which is specifically based on agro entrepreneurship. Sales and marketing is big, very big in agro. And because it comes in different way, we remember in agriculture, you start from selling information, selling inputs, selling a lot of new things that are coming, even selling data. And at the end, there's quite a lot of produce to sell. So whether you are selling inputs for like what you're going to see in the agrochemicals, in the fertilizers, in the seed, that's a huge segment. Then there is obvious when it comes to the offtake of the actual produce. I know Nicholas is here. Nicholas Ambanya will tell you from planting to the time he delivers to the final customer. There's quite a lot of sales and marketing that is involved there. We already also have market analysts. Market analysts will be able to analyze markets, whether they are analyzing from Kawangware, Githurai, Karatina market, or Kurima, or even the big markets, and they can be able to tell you this is how the trends are in terms of different products, different mix of products, and this goes all the way to the international market. Yeah, so what you need to understand when you're setting up an agro business, it's very important for people to understand the supply chain and the availability of products. You should know what you intend to get. If there's any value addition, okay, there are most of the produce that you are selling without any value addition. But if there's any technology that you need to put, you need to understand the technology involved and where to source that technology. I know our Juakari sector has come up with different technology, but some of the technologies that is involved in big value addition is still not out of Africa. We still have to get it out of Africa. Seasons are very important, and weather is key. We all know that we no longer can be able to predict weather. And you should also be able to know supply and demand. And this is why I'm saying key market information is very important. Then there is the finance. They all always argue that agriculture is one of the least financed sector because of the risks involved. I don't know how true that is, but it is. Agriculture is risky. And but when you're setting up such an agribusiness, you also need to know where am I going to get my capital, so that, because if you are setting a production line, and production, I mean agro production, meaning that you want to put 200 acres or 100 acres of something. Remember, there is the waiting bit of it. When I say waiting bit of it, means that if I'm putting cabbages, I know that I have to wait for another 3 months or 4 months before I get a fast sale out of that. So you need to know that I have to be loaded, or you have to be ready with capital to move that crop to the level that you want. Available human capital and management is very important. Most of the agriculture is not done in cities. It is sometimes done in very remote areas. Sometimes people had to get lonely, and we have come to realize, even us who are involved in different production, that sometimes if you don't plan well, even if you have money, but you don't have good human capital and management, so engaging in some of these agro businesses will be all in vain, because you'll incur a lot of losses where people either mismanaged the ventures or actually did not even take care of the investments. And target markets and the dynamics, there is a lot of market dynamics. Of late, we have been saying that when the onion from Tanzania comes into Kenya, you know what the pricing for our onions come to, especially when there's flooding for carrots and onions. That's just giving the market dynamics. Infrastructure and the geography. So we have had big farmers across the country, some of them in some of the very rich agro zones, producing our food, but the infrastructure there becomes a big challenge. I don't want to give the example of Nyandarua, but I have had the people of Nyandarua keep saying that They have the best agriculture area, but infrastructure sometimes let them down. Then there is understanding of the regulatory and the local legislative issues related to agriculture. There are some things that you cannot go doing without a license. You all know that each and every county would want to charge you cess wherever you're passing through their county boundaries. But they are more like when you now want to start exporting, the list of regulatory issues become more and more complicated. Although we have government organizations and bodies that are meant for that. But you should be able to know that for you to export, you need an export license, you need all the phytosanitary approvals, whether you are bringing in any planting material or you're taking out any crop produce out of the country. It's a very important area to look at. Next. Yeah, so I think this is some of the typical agro supply chain, which is a full business environment. You have provision of inputs, and when we say provision of inputs, even if you Google, some of the biggest businesses in this world are in that sector. So the people who provide fertilizers, the people who provide seeds, the people who provide all the agro technology or agro inputs are in that, and it is where the production itself begins. So the production part is where most of the farmers lie, and it carries the biggest chunk of producers. We call them the primary producers. These carries small scale, large scale, and plantations. Then there's a lot of things to do with bulking, aggregation, cleaning, grading. And this almost happened to all, if not, I think a whole line of most of the products, agro products that are marketed out there have to go through this. Then the trade itself is full trading. We, things like the markets that we have, whether it is the coffee auctions, the tea auctions, the direct market that we have within the country, within the region, and out of Africa. Then there is the processing and packaging, which actually would have come before the trade. And you find that that also takes a whole other region, because in it comes in the people who provide us with packaging material, processing equipment, and it's also a big one. In this case, it reminds me of people like Tetra Pak, and who almost serve all the industries that are dealing either with milk or juice. And then obviously retail. And in there, below there, we have other services that complete the agro supply chain in terms of financial certification and advice. Advice in terms of agro consultants, people like soccer. Certification is there. And as I said before, on the financial matters, we have the finance providers getting into the agro supply chains. Next. Yeah, there's something that we just highlighted. This is normal to any business. It's not just for agribusiness. And they always say when you decide to do something, you take it head on. But you have to self-evaluate yourself, get your business idea, take a bit of time to do your market research. There's quite a lot of people who are not taking that very important part of step, where you get in to sell what your neighbor is selling. Even if it's a small kibada, but next to the kibada, if you're selling cabbages and tomatoes, you also get there and you wonder why your neighbor is selling more and you're not. You didn't know that he or she had done a market research, knowing the time to do it and the time not to do it. Business plans are important, and I'm not saying that it's a must. It's not really a formal business plan, even when, and I don't want to scare anyone that if you have a 2-acre, you still have to do a business plan, but you still have to take a notebook and plan what you want to do with that small agribusiness setup. It's good to make it official, tell people that this is what I'm doing or intending to do. Be ready with your financing. It can be your savings, it can be borrowings from the banks or friends. And one of the other things that, as I said before, is that you got to know that it's one for the long haul, meaning that, for example, if you are venturing into maize farming in Kitale, you still have from planting to wait until 6 months to get your final product out of that. Then if you have to develop a specific product, you have to develop it. There are people that are supposed to work with you. Obvious, this is outright that you might not be working alone. On more formal businesses, you have to build a team and get a qualified team. So if you're setting anything to do with vegetable farming or anything that you want to do, even if it's small daily setup, you still need paravets or vet doctors to come. It's not a must that they will be always there for you, but the service providers can also be part of your team. Location is key. And then when I say location is key, site selection for any business is important on various, for various reasons. Most of it, or part of it being your business also have to be secure. So if you are setting a beef fattening business in the area that you're setting, you know there has been issues of cattle rustling, so you need to consider security of your business. If you are setting up a cabbage farm next to Mount Kenya forest, and you know the elephants will come in, so that's a risk that you need to consider when you're taking your business there. Then the issue of sales, which are more dictated by the market. But as I talk about sales, it's very important to get to some of the areas. If you can be having pre-arranged or contract farming, which I know was discussed in one of the sessions, it is a bit safe to be that way than waiting for the season to come and dictate how you're going to sell your produce. And then from there, you can grow your business. Yeah, we have the youth. And this is one of the things that I'll be happy to invite participants to give their views. We all know, especially in terms of our land use, the land deed or the title deed belongs maybe to the head of the family. And it is very difficult for you to decide on what to do with a piece of land which doesn't belong to you. So this really affects the youth, and it is a bit interlinked to the access of agricultural finance and insurance. So the first point of changing land use and population dynamics, you all know, those of us who are there in late 70s, 80s, and 90s, that some of the areas that we are seeing in Nairobi as part of the real estate business were predominantly coffee, which is agriculture. So if things have changed into real estate, so the different change land dynamics, if you are part of the people who wanted to engage in agriculture and your land had to be subdivided and sold into small plots, then that really affects the youth participation in agriculture. And it links very well with the social and cultural dynamics within the farming population. A lot of things have changed. And some of us, again, think that for our fathers to give us our share of the land, which we need to put into production, they must be very, very old, or having gone for them to leave a will to say that now you can go ahead and do and use the land productively. The third one, there is one issue that is happening in Kenya, which is not very good for agricultural future. Our institutions. Kenya had some of the best institutions in terms of agriculture. And I don't want to call it mismanagement, but there's both poor resource allocation and planning. And we have seen some of the best farms that were meant to prosper agriculture going down to ruins. We have seen universities that were very good in agriculture now being overpopulated and to a point that they cannot offer practical aspect of agriculture. And it is a painful thing. Some of our research institutions are not giving 100% of what they are supposed to give, again, because of lack of resources and to some extent mismanagement. Weather will always be there with us. It's not going to change. We have to change with it. Because as I said, from the time I started this discussion, we have to eat, we have to feed humanity. And when weather change, we also have to know how to change with it. There's a bit of generational change. The current farmer or the people we are talking about this today might not be very patient to wait like some of our fathers and grandfathers waited for years to be paid for their pyrethrum or for their tea or for their coffee. A lot of our youth would want to be paid for what they have worked for there and there. There's a lot of knowledge, skills, and diminishing extension services. This was there, it is no longer there. And where it is mostly driven by the private sector. There seems to be a bit of involvement now that we have agriculture back to the county governments, but the problem there again is in terms of funding. It's not the way it was before. And when I say before, I remember in the 80s when I was a young boy, we used to have Mr. Agriculture coming to tell my grandfather and my mother how to mitigate on some of the soil issues that they were doing. It is somehow not happening the way it used to happen in the 80s. Next. Yeah, we have opportunities. Opportunities are there. We have 1 million young people enter the labor market annually. And you know our tier of people getting into the labor market, right from Saturday 8 when they finish and some of them never proceed. We must thank the government that nowadays they are saying there is 100% transition to the next level. But previously we used to have a whole group of people not proceeding to the high school. And I am happy that that is changing now, because when we have 100% transition to high school, we might be able to save and get opportunities of these young people getting to the next level. Then we have people out of high school, people out of training on technical training, and we have over 12,000 coming from agricultural institutions or universities. We know this number is going down, and one of the other things that is a bit of a worry is that even those who have graduated with agricultural related courses, some of them drop them and decide to pursue on other things. I know it is not their own liking, but it's how our economy is. But it is a worrying trend. Next. Yeah, I am proposing some possible solutions. And this one is more to maintain and ensure that the sustainability, and we are attracting our youth into agriculture. So we must promote agriculture as an attractive and important business. There was one time that agriculture has been associated with academic failures and retirees. This perception has to change. One time in government, when you're retiring, you're given a wheelbarrow, a djembe, and a spade, meaning that you can go and farm now. That needs to change. Then we have to create vocational short-term based internship programs that will link the youth with potential employers. This has to happen with a lot of collaboration between the universities, the government, and the private sector. And I have seen it myself in the organization that I work in, where we are trying as much as possible to get to institutions, agricultural institutions at a very early age, and telling them we can be able to give internship to maybe a group of people. And through that program that we have been running, we have found that if I take 10 and take them through internship through a very busy agro value chain, we always end up remaining maybe about 4 who get up to the highest level of management and technology in some of these organizations. Then we need to sensitize the youth. We must have a national and county platforms to sensitize the youth that agriculture is cool. And we need also to utilize the current digital innovations to attract youth to agriculture. I know it's already happening, but it can be happening on the phones, on the media platform, but we need it translated to the actual production. Subsidies is something that is a very heavy word in Africa. I have seen it work in some other areas where young people wanting to venture into agriculture are given special subsidies by the governments, to a point that some of them don't even pay tax until a certain time that their business start. It's one thing that can be taken. And the good thing, as I've said, is that now countries have a way of making individual decisions on how they want to improve agriculture, depending on what value chains are in those counties. I would like to have a discussion on that when I'm added. Yeah, let's move. Some of the big organizations that, just for an example, that wholly have to depend on agriculture. Some of them you might be feeding on their products this evening, including some ugali. But you all know that if you go deep, and I know we're having youth in these forum today, if you go and Google into some of these companies, you see that some of them are actually very, very big companies in the world. And they all depend on agro value chains. Cargill is one of the biggest in America, and I think it's also here in Kenya. Even ABL, now that they deal with the sorghum and barley farmers, the amount of tonnage they move is huge. And this is one area that we say that we need more and more people to join it, to join in the technical part of agriculture. And it is very interesting to know that you can be involved in all of these or some of the other big guys, either by being a farmer or creating a career and working with some of these. These are just some of the examples that we have. Next. Yeah, I always say agriculture can also be very beautiful. It's therapeutic. When you go out there and find a good crop, most of the agronomists that I've worked with, they will always tell you that they feel sick when they're in the office, but when they get out for what we call crop walks, by the time you're coming back to the office, you feel better. So depending on what crop you're doing, it's therapeutic, and agriculture can also be beautiful. Next. Yeah, it's beautiful. Agriculture also brings people together. There's some quotable quotes that goes with agriculture. Farmers don't retire. Farmers don't just work till the sun goes down. They work till the job is done. And I'm a living example. one of my mentors who is part of this discussion, David Degwa, and I sometimes says that we have to wait until the sun goes down. We don't have to look at our wristwatch to say that it's time to go home. So it's very entertaining, but to close it all, I'll say it's very hard work. It's not for the faint-hearted, but if you develop an interest in it, it's very, very encouraging and very fulfilling. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very, very much, Nicholas. So to our participants who are following either directly on this webinar or via Soccer YouTube channel, we've just had a very, very, I think, powerful presentation from Nicholas Kahiga, and he's actually brought to us in a very, very clear manner that this issue of sustainability, or this topic of sustainability, actually links or goes hand in hand with how we get the youth into agriculture. I know there are very many points that he's mentioned around increasing participation through agronomy or supply chain management, but he's also brought out in terms of the challenges we have, what possible solutions we have. And I think, Nick, what I take from your presentation is that for every challenge, there is an opportunity. And it is about focusing on the opportunities and seeing how we can make use of those opportunities that then take us to a different level. Otherwise, if we spend too much time lamenting on what we see as roadblocks, then we will not make any progress. Great. Without wasting any time, I would want to give other key panelists an opportunity to comment on this particular presentation by Nicholas. Then we will very quickly onboard any questions or comments that our participants may have. And indeed, we've already seen one from Chris Shimba, who has highlighted that in considering the possible careers in agriculture, we should consider policy and research analysis. We had some of the opportunities that Nicholas mentioned. I think you mentioned agronomy, supply chain, engineering, law, finance and accounting, technology, market analysis, sales and marketing as opportunities. And I think what Chris is saying is that even in the area of policy and research analysis, we do have big opportunities for increased participation, but these are critical to sustaining or achieving sustainability in agribusiness. And especially in light of our development trajectory. As we all know, Kenya is a lower middle income country, but we have an ambition to be an upper middle income country by the year 2030. That is our vision 2030. And we are, of course, a signatory as part of the African Union to Agenda 2063, which has very bold ambitions for the development of the continent. And agriculture is right at the forefront of that. So Nicholas, thank you very much for highlighting that what we consider as agribusiness sustainability is actually a very, very critical point to the development of the agricultural space. I would want to bring Pauline Mundia into the discussion to make some remarks. And after Pauline, I will welcome Nicholas Sambanya to also make some remarks based on this presentation and the thoughts that have been shared by Nicholas. So Kahiga, so Pauline, maybe if you could just take a few minutes to give us your inputs as far as this topic is concerned, you're most welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. And Nicholas, thank you very much for that great presentation. I think you've given us a lot of ideas of how really we can improve our agriculture. And I think remember from at the beginning of Nicholas' presentation, he said that agriculture contributes 70% to the economy. But if we look at the players in the agriculture sector, especially the farmers, we don't see that. We don't see that because most of the farmers are the ones who are languishing in poverty. And I think for us as extension advisors, it's important for us to see that we don't have that discrepancy between farmers contributing to the economy, but they're not actually really benefiting. And he has really brought out all the different challenges that we have in agribusiness. And I would like maybe just to share maybe some of these challenges and how in organization by Vision Africa Trust, we have somehow tried to see what we can do to mitigate these challenges. First key challenge I would like to look at is the land use. Of course, like you said, we know the parents own the land and many times they don't allow the children to probably use the land until they are not there. But what we try to encourage our young farmers is that there are other enterprises that they can do that don't require land. Like we've been told, the value chain has a lot of different actors. You don't have to actually work on the farm. So there are several other areas that you can put in the agriculture value chain. For example, once the produce is produced in the field, they can be part of the trading of the commodities. So they can buy the commodities from their parents and do the trading. And that way the money also remains within the community rather than having brokers coming from very far away to get the inputs. We try to encourage our farmers to try and our young farmers to try and get involved in things like this. Enterprises like nurseries, tree nurseries, vegetable nurseries, those ones don't take too much land. So that's another opportunity that our young people can also take part in. And in terms of change in land use from agriculture to real estate and things like that, we are also trying to encourage urban agriculture. I think we've seen a lot of urban agriculture taking place now, where we have people growing their vegetables in their houses, in pots, instead of putting flowers, in sack gardens, so that you can use the limited space. And that way we are still able to put the communities and to the consumers. In terms of the agricultural institutions, like Nicholas has said, I think even for me, this is something that I really feel in about. I'm a graduate of Egerton University when it was an agricultural university, but with the diversification to so many other courses, I think even medicine today, the value of agriculture really is really not there anymore. So I feel probably we should try to have institutions that really focus on agriculture along the value chain. And once they focus on agriculture alone, then it is easier for the agriculture sector to really come up and be something that really contributes to the economy, and the farmers or those who are working in the sector are also able to benefit. The other key issue he talked about was the information dissemination. Yes, we hardly see the extension officers coming nowadays to visitors and tell us what to do. But with technology, then we've come up with different ways of reaching our farmers. For example, in Agribusiness Africa Trust, we have a radio program that goes on here on Thursdays. So this is another way of reaching to many farmers. We have many other organizations also who are working and doing radio programs. So this is also another easy way to reach very many farmers. We also have, for example, we have an SMS system where farmers can ask questions, farmers can call in and respond to their questions without actually having to go and visit them. So it's important for us to use a technology. And this is also another area where the youth come in, because the youth are the ones who will develop for us the apps that we can use to give information to farmers on production, to give them information on markets, and so on and so forth. So this is also a very good entry point for farmers, for the youth to get into agriculture. Then another way to get youth involved in agriculture is to get them involved in agriculture right from the start. And I think we should thank our government for bringing the CBC, because it is a very practical form of education. And if we can introduce our children to agriculture right from early primary, that they can have their small gardens and they can grow their crops and actually pick the crops and sell or take to their parents. It gives them really a sense of pride and a sense of satisfaction. We've had some projects with school gardens in some schools, and the pupils really get excited when they actually see the crops growing and they're able to sell to the teachers. They take home to their parents and they can buy their own pencils and their own books and buy a few things for themselves. So if we can instill that culture of farming right from the beginning, then that way, if they grow with it, it's easier for them to keep up with it. And the other thing I would like to say is that as our farmers are producing their crops, or as we are looking at our agricultural value chain, we need to look at also the environment and see how do we contribute to sustainability of the environment, both the physical environment and the social environment, such that the agribusiness value chain is sustainable, not just for us today, but also for the future. And it is important for everybody in the value chain to really look at sustainability and the environment. And I'd just like to say briefly about the different people in the value chain, the key ones. They should really try to look at sustainability. The farmer, they have to make sure that they produce safe food for the consumers. And we say, if it is not safe, it is not food. So our farmers in their production, they need to do good agricultural practices so that they can be able to do food that is safe for the consumer and is also safe for the environment. In terms of the transport, we should also ensure that we transport our food in environmentally friendly ways. We should also, for our traders and for our processors, we also need to look at integrity in the business, because it's not just about business. And in sustainable agriculture, one of the principles is the principle of care. We care for the environment, we care for people. So we need to be sure that we are carrying out our business with integrity. The government, like Nicholas said, we need to see how they can provide a supportive environment for agribusiness to thrive so that it contributes even more to the economy through giving subsidies, for example, ensuring there's good infrastructure. We know in some areas, the farmers are really not able to give their produce to the market because the roads are very bad. And when the traders come to buy, actually the farmers are asking the traders, utanunua pesa ngapi? And for me, that is really something I feel passionate and painful about, because why should the farmer ask the trader, utanunua hii pesa ngapi? And it's you who has done the work, so you should be able to determine the price. So we need to really empower our farmers. We need to really lobby, help them lobby with the county governments that they can provide for them that enabling environment to do the agriculture in the best way. And last and not least, we need to look at the consumer, who is somebody we've actually forgotten many times in the value chain. We always say the value chain is from farm to fork, but we really don't focus on the consumer very much. So what contribution does the consumer have? One, they need to be deliberate in what they choose to eat, ensuring that they're able to see that the food that they're eating has been produced in an environmentally friendly way. Two, they also need to avoid wastage, because wastage is also a way that harms our environment. So we need to really try and reach out to our consumers and tell them that they also have a part to play in this agribusiness value chain. Thank you very much. I think that's what I can say for now, but if there are any questions, we shall respond to them. Thank you, Ricky.
Good, thank you for opportunity to comment on this again. I'll be very brief because I want the new panelists, Pauline and the others, to have a chance to say more. But I'll say just one or two things. That I mean, given the presentation that Nicholas has done, thank you, Nicholas. You covered this in depth, and you've actually, brought out the aspect of history, the aspect of current, what the future should look like, the gaps, the interventions, and opportunities that exist. It's been well covered, and I want to thank you for that work. And commenting on that, I want to say that truly what you brought out, and we've been talking about this, is that as a country we need to retrace our path with regard to sustainable agriculture and food security and food safety. We need to get back to where we lost the path. And there's no need of reinventing the wheel. You know, we don't know what we need to do, but just need to reset our systems back to what they should be, so that we can be able to have a sustainable productivity or production or agriculture. Of course, with the times we are living in now, we need to onboard aspects of innovation. We need to bring on board aspects of technology. And with that, I want to confirm that given the direction the discussion is taking, what we want the Kenyans and our neighbors by large to see that there is enormous, endless opportunities for each one of us. What we need is just a well-planned ecosystem of things where each player has a role, each player has space, but of course regulated space that ensures that each one is doing whatever they do in the interest of the other. And as a country, we can get back to food secure status. Thank you, Ricky. That's all I will say.
Thank you very much, Nicholas Sambanya and Pauline, for those remarks. So, as I was listening to Nicholas and Pauline, one thought or reflection that came to mind. This is in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The habit that says start with the end in mind. And the fact that many people approach agribusiness as by the way. They do not, what you have, I think as someone said, Kenyan speak, the quail mentality, where you just jump onto the bandwagon because you hear people are making money doing something, but you do not have the right mindset, you do not have the right tools or thoughts or framework in order to succeed. And what I feel Nicholas and Pauline and even Nicholas Sambanya have shared is that you must have the right mindset. When Nicholas, you talk, Ambanya, you talk of resetting, it is about having the right mindset that agriculture, which is about feeding people primarily, and you will make your money feeding people, providing opportunities through agriculture, but you must have the right mindset in order for it to be sustainable. I think that is a very, very clear message that is emerging. And at the same time, from Pauline's remarks, the opportunities are many. Maybe what is an issue, and I look at one of the points that has been raised by one of our participants, is that communities rely on rudimentary tools or methods of farming. There is not so much in terms of incorporation of innovation right at the inception of thinking and planning your agribusiness, which is contrary to what has been pointed out here. And what I want to ask is, how can we go about bridging the gap? Because the practitioners on the ground talk of the small to medium scale farmers can benefit a lot from what we have discussed, but there is seemingly some kind of divide or gap between where they are and what we have outlined as critical factors for success. So how do we actually go about addressing that gap so that we can achieve sustainability, but also increase the participation of youth? Maybe just to go back in reverse, Nicholas, you would have, Ambanya, you would have some thoughts to share on that, and then Pauline and Nicholas Kahiga. Please, Nicholas Ambanya, you're welcome.
Ricky, I'm saying let Pauline go first. I attend something here and then I come second. Pauline, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Ricky, for that. And I think you're very right in especially talking about starting with the end in mind. I think what is important for us as extension and advisory services providers is that we need to take this information to the farmers, because they're the ones who really need the farmers, who really need the information. And I don't know which methods we should use. We shall think about that. But we need, for me, what we really need to do is to find how to empower the farmers, show them that they are responsible for, as they are responsible for agriculture, then they also have a say in reaching out to the county governments, reaching out to their politicians, for them to provide for them that enabling environment for them to be able to succeed in the business. So it's important for us to find ways really of getting this information back to the farmers.
Ricky, really, thinking about how you summarize this scenario that we are trying to find a solution around it. What becomes clear is that and going back to the presentation by Nicholas Kaiga is that a clear stakeholder engagement needs to be outlined and put in place, with every ecosystem player playing their part. What is the part of the main government? What is the part of the county governments? What role does our institutions play? For example, you mentioned our issue of Kenagop. Kenagop is now suffocating under poor seed supply for potatoes because that capacity doesn't exist. And the pockets in which exist is expensive, farmers can't afford, and on and on. So it's a national dialogue we sort of ought to have, if so to speak. It has no one-way solution. And Paulina, as we talk about farmers being empowered, that's a very important thing. But then there need to be a framework that compels that. The farmer has been left on their own. Now, private dealers like us who are coming in, we can only, we can't fill the whole space, whereby I said we pay farmers according to cost of production and not market price, just so that the farmer can be sustained. But you need how many trigger foods to do that? It's high time we began having policy outlines, like what happens in the US. If you can't buy maize for this price, sorry, it is not available. We'll even throw it in the sea or give it to relief agencies so that the farmer's price is actually sustained, So Rita, as you rightfully summarized that, the farmer, the rest of us, the farmer and the rest of us be in the right mindset. What role are we supposed to be playing in making this a reality? If you want to buy food for almost free, for nothing, you will have it today, but tomorrow you can't have it because the money you pay cannot sustain another production cycle, and on and on. So it's a reset of mind across the board. But as I said, with every stakeholder, every player properly and rightfully positioned their place and playing their role. And this begins with the policies, and not just policies, but it begins with the implementation of the same, begins the right legislations that also has backing in terms of making it happen, and really some framework. And that's why in Kenya and in Africa by large, these discussions take place, but you see less action across it, with a few private guys, companies, IPS and PIGA and the rest trying to do something, but not enough, because we need everybody to align. So really, this is a discussion that we need to continue having, and soccer, kudos for holding this discussion. It is not happening right here, right now. We just need to find a way of taking it forward, and hopefully we are speaking with the nation, we are speaking to leaders, and we're speaking to players, and yes, it's time and the right time for it to be taken forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nicholas Sambanya and Pauline Mundia, for those sentiments. And we'll go back to Nicholas Kahiga. Maybe, Nicholas, you could share some thoughts around that particular question, even as we acknowledge sentiments by one of our participants, who has said that yes, the right skill set, the tool set are very crucial. If we don't have that mindset and we don't have a shift in how we approach agriculture, then we will not have sustainability in any way. So Nicholas, how do we go about bridging the gap? We've heard from Pauline, we've heard from Nicholas Sambanya. Maybe you would have some thoughts to share with us.
Thank you, Ricky. I think some years ago, and it get us back to 70s, 80s, and early 90s, when Kenya was known for its strong cooperative movement, especially for things like coffee, tea, pyrethrum, and the rest. That in itself was one way of having a coordinated way of improving things. That in itself was a way of bringing farmers together. Because what happened after that, and there are some sectors that today have never had a cooperative in Kinago for cabbages or potatoes. They tried with potatoes, and the thing is that they are all individual farmers. It is very hard for you to sell innovation to individual farmers. It is very difficult for you to sell new ideas, or even telling farmers this is not the right time for you to plant the crop if they are working individually. We have to get back to a situation where we have regional cooperatives or regional movements that are guiding farmers depending on what they are growing. And by so doing, first of all, they'll have a bargaining power in terms of the markets. It will also be very good for any person bringing innovation, whether it's government or non-governmental institutions, to know that there is already set, well-organized group where information can be disseminated in a proper way. And this is what happens when we have farmers that are well linked. And I'll give my example on an experience that I had in one state in Brazil, where they do a lot of yellow passion fruit and mangoes. The universities in those states are well linked to cooperatives, and anything happening, for example, any outbreak of any disease, is taken back to the universities. And the professors in those universities are very practical. So they have done all the research, and if it is anything new, they will be able to get back with solutions to the farmers. So I believe that for some time now, and I think this started happening even to some of the key crops within Kenya, is that the breakdown of our cooperative movement or groups did not even serve well when it comes back to giving back the farmers in terms of new innovations, teaching them about new problems and challenges like pests and diseases and how to handle them. And you all know that the world is also becoming more and more tougher on things like phosphates, some of the old molecules. But how do you bring the farmers together to tell them that if you are a single tomato farmer in Mwea or in Loitoktok or in Rumuruti, you don't care, then rather than when you had a cooperative that would say, if you are seen using the wrong chemicals or the wrong chemical for a particular food, which you know is going to be sold to our people, then you are kicked out of that movement. And I think it is a high time we now go to the way the matatu industry was organized in Kenya. Whether you are driving a bus or you are minibus or small matatus, you have to belong somewhere. So in this case, if you are growing cabbages and potatoes in Kinago, tomatoes in Mwea and Loitoktok and wherever, there must be a way of self-regulating, and that also plays a very big role on whoever would want to come and bring back good information or beneficial information or advice to the farmers to get a leeway of going through. I know some of the companies are doing that, especially those who have contracted a lot of farmers with a lot of challenges. I know some of the agrochemical companies and AAK are trying, but bringing those farmers together is becoming very difficult. Those are my thoughts, that we still have to go back to our original strength of having good, very strong cooperative movements. Thank you.
Nicholas, I think that's a very powerful thought you've shared there. That as I guess it's another saying, you know, we hear of teamwork and team standing for together, each one achieves more. And the fact is, we have actually seen that neighboring countries such as Rwanda have basically borrowed from the principles and the structures of our cooperative movement and made it work in their environment. Whereas we've allowed distrust to stop us from utilizing the opportunities and the strengths that we have when we work in concert, you know, as a team. I want to just give, you know, because some of our participants have asked, you know, are there youth on this platform? And I want to give Peter Muthi. I know Peter might say he's not that young, but in light of the other panelists here, he is in the youth segment, and I know he has perspectives to share. He's actively engaged in supporting agribusiness entrepreneurs in the field, and perhaps Peter might have some thoughts to share as regards this question of how do we bridge the gap between what has been shared by the advisors here and what we see on the ground, which is a very sad mismatch. So Peter Muthi, if you're able to unmute and also share your video, please just share your sentiments with us. Okay, unfortunately, we seem to have lost Peter Muthi. He seems to have dropped off. His inputs, I believe, would have been very crucial at this point. But as we draw towards the close of this particular discussion, we of course want to look at what's a way forward, and how do we make what we have talked about come to fruition. And I see two things that I want to pose to our panelists. You have, I think, raised sentiments that address what I would call operational interventions that address sustainability and inclusion of youth. Simple things such as the use of social media, promotion of agriculture, and agriculture not just from the point of view of farming, but the wider aspects of agriculture, but also on a different level, what Nicholas Ambanya highlighted, the need to have strong and strategic policy or institutional conversations that help us to address the gaps from an extension point of view, but also help us to motivate youth and other practitioners to actually appreciate what it is and what it takes to succeed in agriculture. So I would want to open the floor to our panelists. I will start with Pauline Mundia, in terms of giving us some suggestions on how can we exactly go about, what's a way forward for us addressing both operational and institutional or policy level interventions that are needed in order to achieve sustainability and increase the inclusivity of youth in agribusiness. Pauline, if you are able to share your sentiments, please proceed.
Okay, Thank you very much, Ricky. And thank you for giving that very good summary. I think probably for me, what I would say is the best would be for us to try and start small. Sometimes you don't really have to talk out so loud, but from the actions, then we can be able to bring people in and involve them in agriculture. So what I would say, for example, we can encourage our youth when they're in the universities, probably to come up and see how they can make agriculture more attractive, how they can make it easier, even for those who are practicing, because we know if we look at the agribusiness value chain, the production basically is like the cornerstone. So if we're able to grow that cornerstone, then the rest of the chain will be okay. So if we can encourage our young people to develop apps, to develop innovations, small implements that our farmers can use, make farming much easier, then we can really encourage more people to come into agriculture. And then our consumers, let's look at our consumers and ask them to really try and support our farmers. You know, we go to Mama Mboga and we bargain on the price of the skuma and everything. But when we go to the supermarket, we just pick things and put them in the basket and go to the till and pay. So as consumers, what part do we play? Can we also just remember that the Mama Mboga is selling our vegetables and our fruits has also done quite some work, and we just buy as we buy things in the supermarket. I think that's what I would say. Thank you.
So I'll go next. Thank you very much, Ricky. As I said, quite a discussion happening at the right time. Youth, when we talk about youth, obviously we need to understand that we are in a completely different generation. They call the millennials or those kind of names. I mean, the environment has changed, the mindset has changed. Expectations have actually changed from our youth. I was in one of the forums at Radisson Blue Hotel where they were discussing how do we bring youth to the table of agricultural conversation and then encourage them to do agriculture. And the two things came out very clear. The first thing is that technology. Youth are now tech savvy, so to speak. Technology is the most attractive thing now to the youth. And we said, if we can have policies and financing and the projects going into how to, to have a fusion between technology and agriculture, and then this is going to be very interesting and very attractive to the youth. And there are governments that have come up with this kind of policies elsewhere and developed that kind of field. I'm sure the Konza, Technocity, or those kind maybe should also have been, could be they are going to speak to this particular requirement. So when we incorporate technology into agriculture, that will be very much attractive to youth. What also came up clearly was that there was a gap in agricultural finance or access to credit. You know, there's few youth who have tried to say, okay, let me practice the knowledge I learned from Agro University, whatever like that. You know, and they are saying, bring a logbook, bring title deed, bring that. You know, the financial institutions are yet to respond to agriculture financing as the backbone of economies in Africa. They still consider agriculture very risky. And this, again, a policy area that the government needs to intervene. In Tanzania, where Twiga is having a large-scale potato production right now to the tune of 30 tons a day, we found out that the government set up a bank to compete with the commercial banks. So that bank has given a cooperative society that is based in southern Tanzania a loan of over 350 million shillings without any collateral. They just organize themselves. They had a marketing plan, they had a production plan, and they got a loan. A commercial bank, a normal private person would be saying, how would you pay? Where is your title deed? Where is this? Where is that? The Development Bank of Tanzania did not ask for that. So credit finance, the kind of finance of access to credit is a key thing that will push youth to do agriculture. And of course, then the third very important thing is that we as this presentation, as the rest of us have said, we need to have an environment that allows full value chain development. So if I plant my things, what will I sell? There should be an environment that allows for equal, fair marketing structures that are in place to ensure that there is uptake of product when these youth do. I've met youth who have been frustrated. They did the Amaranthus project in Nyanza province. And when the Amaranthus was ready for harvesting, people were supposed to buy, disappeared. They were nowhere to be seen. So where was the government when this project was being launched? What was the contractual agreement between the people, the person, and the youth? Who brought this seed, and all that? I came across another aspect, and Mananja, just here next to Thika. Again, youth were brought, somebody was brought by the county government officials. He sold them to them beehives and said he will come back and buy their honey at 1,000 shillings per liter. And they bought the hives from the guy, they paid. When the honey was ready, this guy was nowhere to be found, but he was brought in by a government official. So what was the contract agreement? What was the arrangement? And things like that. So a value chain development in food that addresses support from production all the way to marketing is important for the youth to see the essence in it. And then obviously, Pauline, you mentioned the fact that we need to go back and strengthen our knowledge institutions. If we are killing agriculture by diluting agriculture-based institutions and making it more theory than practical, I now know of universities that are teaching agriculture, they have no land. They have no land even to show growing of cabbages or carrots. That is dangerous. Yeah. So we need to go back and strengthen those institutions, make it a practical university. Jomo Kenyatta University was talking to me the other day about what do they need to do to improve their courses or their learning. And I said, you guys, you need to include current affairs as part of your learning. So if you are teaching students how to control blight and you are talking about a pesticide that became obsolete 15 years ago as a lecturer, then you are not current. No, today you should use the current information. What are people using right now to control blight, to control this pest, to control this disease like that? And let the students also know what is happening in the cultural arena. What happened yesterday in UK? What happened today in Kenya about what's happening in the horticulture and floriculture sector? Then be part of the planning should be current affairs. What is actually happening? Those are the things that are going to encourage the youth to actively and productively participate in agriculture. Over to you, Ricky.
Thank you very much, Nicholas Ambanya. I'm going to ask Nicholas Kahiga to give us his thoughts. And as Nicholas shares, I would also ask him to maybe weigh in on a question that's been raised by Chris Shimba. Chris has asked, why is it so difficult to involve the youth in agricultural decisions, strategy, policy, and bill development, but only rope them in at the implementation stage? Doesn't this affect youth's participation in agribusiness? And how do we change the situation? So I think overall the sentiment from Chris Shimba, Nicholas, is that why does it seem that the youth are brought in at the implementation stage and not at the formulation of solution or strategizing stage? I do know that this is being addressed, but it will be good to have your perspective on this as you help us to understand how we can bridge the gap between what we have shared here and what seems to be the situation on the ground. And lastly, before Nicholas Kahiga shares his perspective, I just want to share with our audience that in our sessions of the masterclass, this particular topic actually comes right at the tail end of setting pace for how one must approach agribusiness. And we will have one additional session where we'll be looking at addressing the challenges that have been identified from a regulatory or environmental point of view. So we will have one additional session addressing this topic and other challenges that must be addressed that are cross-cutting here, that they do not affect just agro inputs or production, they affect all the different stages in development of an agribusiness. So to our listeners, we will continue with this particular conversation in a week's time. But having said that, I do want to give Nicholas Kahiga the floor so that he can give his remarks and address some of the questions that have been raised by our participants. Welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you, Ricky. I think I'll start with the question that has been raised. That's why is it that the youth are involved at the end tail of decision making or at the implementation? I think that is somehow changing, and it's changing even through our constitution. I just remember last year the government was going through some changes of the Crop Act. Can't remember which CAP, and there was a lot of public participation that went out or was done. I'm not saying that when it went to the next level, you know, if it is something to do with an act of parliament, it will still have to go through the committee of parliaments or committee of Senate, and you know what happens there. I have been involved in some, in two key areas, that is horticulture and also industrial crops. And I think it's changing, because any public participation may not be limited to the airites. Everybody who has a stake in it can be brought in. But having said that, I'm not saying that it has already had any effect to the youth involvement in agriculture as we look at it as it is today. I think one of the most interesting one, and let us not just look at the graduate level. I know we've talked about the universities and all. If I start by making sure that we are developing the right agro leaders, what I mean is that somebody who will take up the leadership of what Ricky is doing, or what Nicholas Sambanya is doing, or what I'm doing. That is key, that we develop those leaders now. And that will start by getting the right mentality by the time they are choosing a course to do in the university. What I mean is, most of the current generation will be sometimes invited for an agricultural course and say, I do not want to do agriculture. I know last year, 26 courses related to agriculture did not even attract any candidates or any students across the divide. And this is what I have said, there's a lot of things that need to be done, campaigns to tell people that there's careers in agriculture, and if not, you don't have to be employed by corporates or governments, both county and national. You can do something with what you learn in school with agriculture. Unfortunately, as a country, and this is again, you all know that we have a very bad succession culture, where I've seen this is even in Europe, where farming families remain for hundreds of years, and they keep on giving that baton to their kids who give it to the next generation. Unfortunately, that is not happening to us. Excuse me. And we got to go back and rethink the whole thing as a society thing, as a research and development thing, as a government thing, that people need to be told that, look, there is a career in agriculture, people must feed, you can make money in agriculture. Nicholas mentioned about some of the problems that farmers go through, because we know in Kenya, we do not have anything to do with guaranteed minimum returns. Most of the countries have put guaranteed minimum returns into their constitutions, and Brazil is one of it. There's a level that you cannot buy a product. And that happens in Kenya. And if I'm a youth and my father is doing some avocado or some cabbages in Kinangop, and then he doesn't have a say on how much he's going to sell, then I'll be disgruntled and say, I might as well go and get my boda boda and do the boda boda job rather than farming, and get frustrated like my father. And those are some of the things that we need to change as a society. Some of them do not need to be taken to universities and all. It is a culture change, but the government have to come in and come in very strong in terms of making sure that they protect the primary producers that we have. Unfortunately, we are having less and less primary producers. We are having more and more brokers or in between, and we are having more and more consumers. So if we don't protect the primary producers, we'll end up doing what I've already started seeing, that the people making money are not the farmers, but it's the people in between there, and eventually will not have any sources of products that we are looking at. And it pains me to know that I've seen farmers even selling produce below their cost of production. And people keep on making this joke that even ng'ombe or the cows have refused to eat tomatoes or cabbages because of the floods. And we should also have county governments committed to tell their people that we might as well have some prearranged commercial contracts with several people. And then also, let's return back to where we were in terms of value addition. I remember one time, and it was there when there was a Pan-African vegetable factory in Naivasha, which was taking a lot of excess vegetables out of Kinangop to make sure that farmers do not sell at a loss. Such thing must be encouraged, and not just being encouraged in one area. Let the county government comes in. By so doing, the youth who are we having will not be frustrated like their fathers and grandfathers are, and they will get into agriculture, meaning that they will have, as I said in the start, that even if you're not going to put a very huge business plan, at least youth of today will go with a notebook and say, I used 10,000 to grow these cabbages. Why do you want me to sell you below 10,000? Those are my thoughts.
Okay, so yeah, Nicholas and the other panelists have shared some very pertinent thoughts about addressing the gap. And as I said prior to their remarks, we will be having one additional session where we will be looking specifically at the constraints, and we'll be widening the conversation to other constraints which we have covered in previous sessions. As an example, some of the issues around regulatory environment that are hindering, as an example, again, the uptake of organic agriculture principles. This has been highlighted in previous sessions. We would want to look at that and ask ourselves, how do we proactively seek to address these issues so that we can create a change? But overall, just looking and recapping at tonight's discussion, we've had some very, very good sentiments raised about what can be done to address sustainability and to increase the participation of youth in agriculture. And as I conclude this particular session, I want to just go to this one slide that Nicholas Kahiga shared with us. And he did mention some steps there that address the topic or issue of sustainability. And just to summarize, he mentioned self-evaluation for any agricultural entrepreneur, coming up and being very clear about your business idea, looking at the market opportunity, getting feedback before you plunge into it, coming up with a business plan and making it official, which basically says putting it on paper. That enables you to then seek out the financing that you need and start on the process of product development, for whatever intervention or area that you're seeking to get into agribusiness, and allows you to build a strong team with a location in mind. So business is not ad hoc, it must have a location. Whether you are in virtual business, promoting agribusiness, or you're in the field doing production, you must have some central point. And of course, then there's sales and growing your business as other considerations. So these major steps in setting up an agribusiness actually allow us to reflect on tonight's topic, which has been on sustainability and increasing the involvement of youth in agribusiness. And I think in closing, I want to just thank our panelists for sharing their thoughts and their perspectives. We are open to having you as participants engaging with our panelists. We will be sharing these presentations on the SOCA website. So please visit www.soca.or.ke. We will also share the contacts of our panelists if you would want to engage with them further. But as we have covered tonight, and we've had it loud and clear, it is actually a journey. It's a process to achieving sustainability, and it does have operational aspects, but it also has issues around the framework or the environment that we are operating in, and we must be ready to engage at both levels. So on that note, I want to thank our panelists for sharing their time and their insights. I want to thank all our participants for making time to be with us tonight. And I encourage you all to join us next Friday as we come to the closure of what has been part one of our SOCA masterclass, looking at the role of agribusiness advisors in ensuring food and nutrition security, looking specifically at profitability and sustainability of agribusiness. So thank you very much for your time. I wish you all a good evening. Thank you once more.
Thank you.